Another option of setting up our grower farm field in the software, in the My Farm app, is to be able to import yield data. However, sometimes with yield data you don't actually have any boundaries with them, so we have to import the data and then create the boundaries afterwards. One thing that you may want to look at is getting some data into the software that you've been using in the past, so you have an idea of what you're looking to expect when we get up to the My Farm app. This way you can check that you have got yield data or coverage data or whatever data you're trying to bring in. In this example, we're looking at yield data. So here we've just got part of a field because there was two machines working in here, and so we've got another USB stick that we'll need to import afterwards to make sure that the field is complete. But this is what we have from one USB stick from one machine, and this is exactly what we'll need to be doing when we come to importing it into the My Farm app. So that would be the first part of the process. So yeah, we're running two systems together, but at least if we've been the one that we have been using in the past, we know how to use that, we know how to bring data in, so we know what to expect when we're looking at our data in the online portal. So we go to the My Farm app, and what we want to do is to add some data. So we'll click the cross that says add, we'll go to Case New Holland, and we want a CN8. We're going to go to desktop, then harvest 2019, because that's the way that we've been doing it in the past, is copying the data off the USB stick and putting it into a folder on harvest 29. Still follow that good procedure and that good process. Double click harvest 2019, and then if your data isn't zipped up, then that's the first thing that you'll need to do. Generally right mouse click send to compressed folder if it isn't already in the zipped format. So here it is in the zipped format. We highlight it, file name, and then click open, and then the progress bar will start to move. One thing to remember here is that it can take some time to process your data. The first time you do this, it will be a surprise probably of how long it does take the data to upload, and from that, if you then move on to upgrading to the PLM Connect telematics service, this importing time into the software is greatly reduced because the data is being processed in small packets rather than one large file of data at the end of harvest. So if you haven't got the PLM Connect telematics service, then if you're wanting to see your data fairly soon after harvest, then it's something that you may want to consider because of the processing time and being able to view the maps after that. In this version of the data, we don't have any field boundaries, just to let you know. So this is why we're doing it on giving you this example. Tick all the boxes about operators and agronomic tasks, etc. We don't want to overwrite field boundaries, so we'll then click finish. This can take some time. I think this is just a 39 megabyte file. If you have something that is in the hundreds of megabytes, then I would highly recommend sort of starting this at the end of a day and then leaving it to process overnight. It can take a good couple of hours depending on the size of file that you've got. So it's certainly one of those jobs that you do to leave it overnight. I'll click pause here and then come back to you when we get to the next window. So here we see that the processing settings are now showing that importing that data is scheduled, and this is the part that will take some time to do. What you are able to do is carry on working, so we can just minimize this window and carry on working with the software and having a look at our data if we need to. If we need to go back and see, if we come back in the morning or later on in the day and just wondering where our process our data is in the process system, then we can go to our name in the top right hand corner, process status, and then it comes up with that same window again. And so yeah, just as and when this starts to move across, it will say completed or finished. at the end of it, and then we can go and view our data. So we'll come back to this window a little later. If we go and check on the process of our yield data import, we go to process settings, and we see that our processing has finished. We've got 0 out of 18 processed files processed successfully. Click more details, opens up another window, and then what it says is that we have no boundary. Well, that's not a surprise, because that's what we were expecting, because we know that we didn't have any boundaries when the yield data was recorded. So we know that the data has come in, which has been good. We then go across to missing layers. Click missing layers, and we actually don't see anything in here, even though it says missing boundaries. The key button to check here is 2019, so it's all seasons. So when was the harvest done, rather than the harvest or when we were bringing the data in. If we click 2019 now, we see that we have 11 items of missing layers, and we'll click load layers, as long as the date is set correctly and the type. So click all, and we go back to 2019 because that was the harvest year that we were looking at. It's selected automatically. If we go to 2020, then it changes it to 2020 there. 2019, it changes the filter. A really helpful way to be able to see the information for the missing layers. We'll click load layers, and it brings up all of the layers that we have missing data for. If we just have a quick look in fields, we can see now that if I've got my right grower selected, go to Brown, name of the field, got all my fields selected, they're now in red. And this means that there is some data there, but we don't have any boundaries. So if these were if these were black, then they would have boundaries. As they are in red, it means that they don't have any boundaries. So what we'll need to do is look at our harvest layers, our load layers here, and import them in one by one. So the process for doing that is, if we tick harvest, and there is an option of ticking select all. Do not select all here, because it will create problems when you want to bring data in, draw boundaries. It will combine them all together in the same field name. So this is a slightly longer process, but it's a much faster one than if you select all and then having to try and split them all out. To avoid this happening, if you've got your field boundaries set up and in the software on my farm before you import it in, you won't have any of this. So highly recommend getting your field boundaries into the software before you start to import any yield data. It will be much quicker than having to go through and load layers and do it this way. Especially as we see in the second one down, we've got part of our yield data because we've got 2 or 3 machines working in that particular field. So we're going to have to spend more time working on that. In the first one here, BAD 04, we can see the boundary. If I tick the second one down, you can see that it's created a boundary around each of the pieces of yield data, which we'll have to deal with later. So I highly recommend that you import yield data into field boundaries that have already been set up in the software. Much easier. However, that's not always possible, so let's work out now how to create a boundary around the field. So we've got our BAD 04 ticked. We click draw field, and then we'll go update field. If we hadn't got the field set up in the software, then we would go create. However, we know that it is in the field because the data has been imported. So we'll go update field. Nothing selected, and we'll go down to BAD 04, and then we'll click update. Select the grower, the farm, the field name, and it will calculate the area later on as it did before. Nothing else that we need to change here other than click save. And the data has now been brought in. What we'll do is we'll click out of draw. We'll click the missing layers, so we're back to just BAD04. This field BAD04 now is scheduled for processing, and we can keep an eye on that under process status, and it's now 100% finished. So that process, once the data is in, is quite fast. We'll click the refresh button on our monitor, on our browser, sorry, and refresh it so it's got the whole of the data in. Click field view. Just have to make sure that the right field name is selected at the top. It goes straight to the default one, BAD02, and we now see that BAD04 has now got is now in black, working our way through that. So in that time, we can now see that we've got our wheat data that has been processed. The one thing that we've noticed here is our bushels per acre. We'll just need to go back into to my settings, and if we haven't done that already, just make sure that we've got our currency selected correctly. Click save. And go back to my farm. My fields, BAD04, field view, ticket, and then we're back into to tons per hectare. What we're not able to do at this stage is to be able to create some legends. There are other videos available on how we look at narrowing the number of legends down for the way that we view our data. So just check out those videos on editing the legends. The most important thing here is we're getting data into our software, where we have our BAD04 now set up in our management tree, and this one isn't really looking at how to view yield data. We'll come on to that again. It's just about setting up our fields in the software. To summarize though, if you are able to create boundaries in your vehicles and set that up in the software before you import any yield data, it makes the whole process of importing data and organizing it much easier.